Joan Quinn Profiles. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, LA Style, and Detour magazines, Joan covered the social set, the Hollywood hotshots, the international art scene, the mysteries of food, the excitement of travel, and the fabulous world of fashion. Joan continues to find creative people on the cutting edge who make things happen. Here's Joan Agajanian Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Waiting to be profiled are musician, author Bill Marx, and playwright, actress Stacey Martino. Musician, author Bill Marx was raised in California in the family of Harpo Marx, one of the famous Harps brothers. I made a mistake. Can you do that? Harps? Did you ever use that?
I've not used it. From now on, I'm using
Harps,
it. I
Marx, and one of the famous Marx brothers. From your book, Bill, it seems like you had a really happy childhood.
Thank you very much, and it's my good fortune to be here with you today. I had a blessed...
It seemed like you were really happy, the way you write about it in Son of Harpo Speaks. I felt like, you know, you were just a happy child, and they were really nice to you, and everybody was nice to you.
Well, to get the most important part of this book out of the way, I am adopted. As
I know, and
as well as my two brothers and sister.
Oh, I see, the whole family.
So the whole family adopted one another.
From the Catholic services.
Oh, yeah.
That was a really great place, Catholic services at that time.
Yes, it was wonderful, but I will tell you that I was another human being at that time. My name was James Weisfeld Clapperich at the time, and I had been given up for adoption, and I got adopted when I was 14 months old, so I was already another person.
Oh, yeah.
So, and it was because my folks decided that they wanted to have a family. My dad had been in show business for 40 years, and my mother had been in for 20, and they hated it. Well, my mother hated it and wanted to have a family, so they went out and they adopted me. And it was fatalistic, I am sure, as I write in the book, you know.
It is true. And they were at the point in their lives where they really appreciated what they got.
Well, I think...
you know, it's true.
You know, the brothers always had a sense of family.
Did they?
All five of them.
Were they really close together,
yes,
the
always.
Marx brothers?
Throughout the entire existence, they were loyal to one another and cared for one another and stuck by each other. And
did they take care of each other's family and kids? Were
no,
they friendly?
took care of their own situation. But in terms of just the brothers were bonded
with each other.
And so there was never a problem there. I just got the feeling that with Dad, when my mom finally nailed him after chasing after him for 4 years, he was a confirmed bachelor at the time, well, the whole time, as a matter of fact. From his birth, he was a confirmed bachelor. I would have to say that she convinced him that it was time to have family. And when he finally agreed to it, he realized that it took him back to East 93rd Street in New York, where they were born and raised, and that there was a new sense of family that came into his life.
Yeah, actually, East 93rd Street is a very fancy area right now, and you were raised in Beverly Hills, right in the heart of the flats, in the best area. You went to Hawthorne.
That's right.
Yeah, that's where my kids went to school. Where else did you go?
Well, I went to the corner drugstore.
Oh, you could walk
I went to
down the
Crawford's Music Store. I went to Chapman's Ice Cream Parlor.
Right.
This was Beverly Hills before it became Beverly Hills.
Right.
It was vast wasteland. I remember my mother used to get in a car and drive down to a corn stand on Olympic and Sepulveda, somewhere around there.
Oh, I remember that.
It was called Lowe's Corn, and she would bring home. I mean, there was nothing around really.
Did you keep a diary? How did you write? Because this book is solid packed. It has a lot of great photographs. But did you make a diary? How did you remember
The only
everything?
diary that I ever really made was when I had the privilege of going to England to appear with my dad ultimately in British vaudeville, which was the British music hall circuit at the time. We played the London Palladium for 4 weeks.
What did you do?
Well, I was, by the time I was 12 years old, I became his prop man, his official prop man.
Oh,
I would put the carrot in the upper left-hand thing, and then and the scissors over here, and all of that, and the knives in his. And if I didn't do it right, and he went out, he went to cut somebody, and the rubber chicken came out. That was no good.
Not good.
But he, and then of course I did a little shtick with him on the stage.
That's what I wondered. So he depended on you. And were you keeping? You were keeping a diary then.
I kept a diary for those 3-4 months. Yes, I did. And it gave me such an appreciation of what vaudeville really was all about. It was like a great big family that taught discipline and respect. No matter how lousy the act was, you had a great camaraderie with somebody that gave of themselves for 7 minutes a night to be in something that didn't pay very well, or it was lousy, or
and you were supportive.
And I'm probably sitting here, probably the last vertical vaudevillian you'll ever interview in your entire life.
It is true. I've been reading and seeing documentaries on vaudeville and burlesque, because burlesque is really making a comeback. But it was a part of vaudeville. It was a part of that stage show. Did your father actually play the harp?
He actually played the harp.
Did he teach you?
No, I taught him. Actually, he taught himself.
Because you're a great musician.
Well, thank you. Actually, he found out through his mother, Minnie, that an act with a harp in it got $5 a week more than an act without a harp. So Minnie sent him this harp, and it was originally just a music act.
That's why I wondered
6 mascots, the 4 mascots, the 4 nightingales, whatever it was. But they started doing comedy. But at the same time, Chico had already started to play the piano. And
that's right.
Groucho had the mandolin. And so Dad took up the harp to accompany the singing. And as time went on, through the hunt and peck, search and destroy kind of concept, he developed his own mastery and his own way of playing the harp.
How did he lug that piece around? Mandolin you can drag around, or piano you can't drag around either, though.
No, but harp, it was always quite a burden.
Did he wear a wig?
Later on. See, the boys were known for, in fact, there's some pictures in my book, Son of Harpo Speaks, of the boys when they were starting out and were in vaudeville. They had beautiful hair. I mean, way out and and they were known for it.
Yeah.
But as the years went on, and the two-a-days and the summer in the Midwest cities, they decided it was too hot to wear all this, so they bought wigs that simulated
they all wore
that.
wigs.
Yeah, and then ultimately what happened was those wigs weren't very porous in those days, and they started losing their hair, so they had to keep the wigs on they'd already been known for it.
Well, I thought that you would wear a wig and play with him, because they looked like wigs all the time. But tell me what led you to write this book, because you're a composer of classical music and jazz, and you perform in venues all over the world, actually, all over the world. You've written music for motion picture scores, television scores. I mean, you have this great artistry. And here you sit down and write a book that says Son of Harpo Speaks.
The reason for that is because my dad's book was Harpo Speaks, and it's a great book.
And why Speaks? Tell us about that.
Because he never spoke.
Okay.
But his book being titled that, I decided to write an addendum book called Son of Harpo Speaks.
What does it mean, really?
Well, what it really means is it's a different take on who he was. We all recognize celebrity as a one dimension. If I asked you if you knew anything about Humphrey Bogart other than the fact he was an actor, you probably wouldn't be able to give me an answer.
No,
But-
I know nothing except he was married to Lauren Bacall,
Well,
or
that's
that he
it.
made The African
Yeah,
Queen.
but you don't know about the man.
No.
You know what he did, but you didn't know who he was.
Right.
And in this book, as I speak of him very reverently, I don't wish to deitize him, but this is a man who had a creative capacity that was beyond belief. He was a musician, he was a painter, he was an art collector, he was well, let's say a comedian, and he had all these wonderful traits that kept him active mentally all of his life, even when he wasn't allowed to work on certain occasions after having some heart problems.
But you know, I read the book, and it sounds like it's your story. When I said you sound like you had a very happy childhood, it's your story telling the story.
Well,
It's your voice.
yeah, it is. But it's the way we all perceive life the way we wish to perceive it. You can have two children growing up in the same household at the same dinner,
I
the
know.
same conversations. So one person perceives it one way, the other one perceives it
know.
another way.
It's so true.
And I just thought that because fate, and I have no other reason to believe otherwise, I don't know how else to describe it, that brought me from a couple that couldn't keep me, from McAllen, Texas. I wound up in Los Angeles, and how I wound up with Harpo and Susan is beyond me. It happened. They came to the Home Society looking for a 2 or 3 week old child, and there I was, 14 months old.
Adorable.
And they chose me instead. You know,
Adorable.
I mean, that's part of the book, and it really specializes in abandonment, adoption, and acceptance with regard to how we deal with raising children. How do the children recognize who they are and what's important, what isn't? I know when people ask my sister one time, they asked her, how does it feel to be adopted? She says, I don't know, how does it feel to not be adopted?
Exactly, it's true.
All a perception that we have of life, and this was a perception of my dad and my mom, who is probably more interesting than all the 5 brothers put together. I've got a lot of stuff to talk
Yeah,
about with
she's
her.
great.
And
she lived a long life.
just short of 95, and they had to beat her to death.
but it is all the things you're talking about, and it is a story of life. It's a story of life. The one thing that I think is so fabulous is at the end of the book, or at the beginning, it says you do your dedication and your thank yous, and then you said other books by ...
I've never written another book, and I never plan to. This was the toughest experience I ever had. I did write a afterwards to the paperback of Harpo Speaks. That was really tough, but this, I would have to say there's only thing tougher than writing a book, because if you're a musician, you don't think that way. I mean, for me anyway, I
you
think
have the notes in
yeah,
your
I have
mind.
different concept of whatever it is. But the one thing that's tougher for me than writing the book is the indexing. If you have an enemy, give them the job of indexing a book.
Wait.
The worst.
This is a good story, because you came today with a friend of yours, and just before we went on, he said, "Why am I in chapter 7?" Is that what you're talking about?
I want you to know who that friend of mine is. His name is Norm Ross, and he produced the cover of this book. and I've known him since we were both 8 years old, and we've been pals ever since.
And you put him in chapter 7.
Yeah, I certainly did, and that's where he belongs.
Oh, good. Thank you so much, Bill.
Thank you for having me.
This
was a
great.
Absolute joy for me. And
thanks for driving up, because I know you live in the desert now, and it's
right.
really nice.
All I have to do is just find my camel, and I'm off.
You're off again.
Okay. Right.
Thanks for watching this part of the show. We'll be right back with actress Stacey Martino. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome back to the Joan Quinn Profiles. I'm here with actress Stacey Martino, who was born and raised in Philadelphia. She has had a long career in show business during a very short period. Stacey is a lifetime member of the Actors Studio, a playwright, a producer, a teacher, and an activist, as well as a mother, which I think is probably the best thing, right?
Favorite role.
You wear a lot of hats. Much was learned from your Master of Fine Arts in Theater at the New School in New York. Also, you learned a lot of theater training at the University of the Arts in Philadelphia. How did you keep all this stuff going?
I juggle a lot. I mean, really, I've always been a multitasker.
I think that's great. I love it. But this is very multitasking.
It is. Well, one thing sort of just led into another thing. And, you know, I take 3 months and work on one thing, 3 months work on another thing. So
do you line up the projects and know what you're going to do?
I do. At the beginning, I didn't. And then I realized to really complete anything and do it properly, I had to do that. So that's what I'm doing now.
So you're also the artistic director, we didn't add this, and you founded this what's it called?
Coactive Content.
Tell us about that.
Well, that grew out of originally a documentary that I was making with Tasha Oldham, who's a wonderful Emmy-nominated DGA award-winning director. And that is a documentary that is about the 200-year-old initiative to create a Department of Peace in our federal government.
This is how this was
That's
the documentary.
How it first started.
I see.
And then when I wrote the play for my husband, Rene Rivera, The King of the Desert is the name of the play, we decided, you know, let's move it into theater. This is our first theatrical production.
I see.
And being a teacher, I have so many wonderful students with wonderful shows that I thought, let's take it not just from film, and now let's move it into theater, which is where my heart is really anyway.
Well, tell us about starting a company like this.
Yes.
Is there an ensemble on site?
No. What actually, originally when we very first started it, it was mostly filmmakers, as I said. So that's what we really.
That was the group.
I see.
Of
Activists and filmmakers that had come together.
I see.
And then I started branching out.
Because I thought it was a theater company.
Well,
I misunderstood.
Well, this is what's amazing is that all of these people involved in this project also did the play that the documentary was based on.
So they had already had experience doing that.
We have such a relationship, but we never formalized our company. So we thought, you know what? We've been doing this for so long, but we haven't actually been a company. Let's make ourselves a company.
So do you have a venue that you call your own?
We don't, because we are renting this time. This time we're doing it at the El Centro by Paramount.
So you can use different theaters, is that it? But where do you
Exactly.
meet to rehearse?
Now we're meeting at the El Centro where we're doing the show.
And the show is The King of the Desert.
The King of the Desert.
But how did you get to this point to be able to write a play and star your husband in it and take acting from Shelley Winters and work in Russia at Moss Films? Let's go through a few of those things.
Well, to start at the
Shelley.
beginning, I came from Philadelphia. I moved to Los Angeles, and this is a great story.
Because you're so young.
Well, not that young, but Shelley and I were born on the same day. So I was a young kid. I was 20 years old. I had an appointment to go audition for her class. I got
she
there.
was teaching.
She was. I got there and she said, "You're young. What have you haven't done this method stuff. This isn't for you. You're not ready." And I said, "But Shelley, I read your book and I loved it and we were born on the same day." And she said, "Come on Monday and we'll start."
That was it? Born
That
on
was
the
it.
same day.
So I studied with her for years.
So you didn't need, were you related to Al Martino, the
No,
singer?
but my grandfather's name is Al Martino, so my grandmother got into his concerts for free often.
To Al Martino's?
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
Isn't that great?
Did he come to Philadelphia a lot?
He did, actually. He did, because,
What
Philadelphia, New York, that was his stomping grounds.
I know, that's
Yeah.
fantastic. Not
Yeah.
related at all.
No. So then I got a movie in Russia. I went
Yes,
off.
tell me about that. Moss Films. That was
Yes.
pretty cool.
Oh, it was amazing. It was the first joint venture between the United States and Russia, since the wall had fallen.
right.
So it was an amazing opportunity. And, that's really, I did that. And then I went to New York, got my master's, got into
But
the actors.
afterwards, I
Yes.
know, that was very...
I did it
because
backwards.
it took time to do that.
It
and
did.
to spend time doing that.
It did. When I went back to get my master's.
You had already made this film in Russia?
I had.
Was it on location?
It was. And what happened was I saw the amazing theater in Russia. And I thought, I want to do this way. I want to learn this kind of work.
Yeah, but that was... Going to the theater in Russia is like there's depth. When you walk into the theater, you feel
unbelievable.
layers, don't you?
Absolutely.
Because of the excitement of
Yes.
the decor alone.
Yes, absolutely. And you feel the same thing walking into the Actors Studio in New York or LA.
Oh, well, tell us about that.
energetically, not maybe
Yeah.
the decor of the Russian theaters.
Yeah, because you had to audition for the Actors Studio.
I did in New York, and
But did they take you at any age?
yes, I think I was 25 when I
Yeah,
got
how
in.
do they do that?
You just audition. It's 5 minutes.
Do you apply, and do they have to approve you to audition?
They no. Well, there's a very long waiting list.
I bet.
And when you actually do get into the audition, you have this 5 minutes, and you are either passed or you're moved on to become a finalist. And then you have to audition again. And so I was lucky. I got in.
But
on
you
my
had a
first
great
audition.
panel looking at you.
Oh, it was Arthur Penn
I
was
know.
there, who was a wonderful teacher and just an amazing man, and so helpful to me.
And you took, and also was Barbara Bain?
She's here in LA. So what
So it was
happened?
like- okay, tell
now
us
I
about
came
that.
out here to LA. So I did a couple of years in New York, and then I decided to come here to LA. And the studio here is amazing, and Barbara Bain is a moderator there. And so I worked with her in session a lot, and then I got to be directed by her in a play, which was an amazing experience.
And then you directed her.
Well, you know what? I didn't direct her. I wrote a play,
Oh, you wrote a play.
and she was in it.
Because that's pretty bizarre. You took lessons with her. You took lessons with Sandra Seacott, right?
Yes.
And here were these Martin Landau and
Yes.
Mark Rydell. And I mean, all the names that we hear about that you've been able to work, teach with, act with,
Very blessed.
connect
I've been,
with. Because
Yes.
it must show some talent somewhere.
Oh, thank you. Well, when you asked earlier how I got to the writing,
Yeah.
was at a certain point I had done creatively what I had wanted to do as an actress. And now
You mean that bit? You proved what
did.
you could do.
well, there were things I wanted to say as an
Yeah.
activist, as a storyteller. There were stories I wanted to tell. And that's where The King of the Desert grew out of, and The Gift of Peace, which the documentary was based on.
Oh, the gift of I see.
So that was the play that was based on, and that's how coactive content
But
came
then,
to be.
did you go to writing? Did you take workshops?
I was pretty fortunate. That was something I home studied. I read every book I could, and it just sort of flowed out of me. The writing was something
For the play.
I wrote a couple of screenplays, and then I wrote.
Oh, so was that easy too?
That really flew out of me too. The writing wasn't my passion as a child,
Because
but it happened.
most people talk about, I went to the workshop and my peers tore my work apart and I learned this and I learned that. But you
Yeah.
worked alone?
Yeah, I did. The Gift of Peace I wrote in a night, and The King of the Desert I wrote in 2 nights. Now, people haven't seen it yet, so I hope that it's good. I believe it is. We feel very strongly about the material. And then We have been workshopping it, so it goes through changes, you know.
Then, yeah, but you don't get upset when people say, "Oh, this isn't working," or "This isn't
no.
working." As a writer, you have to be
You have
fluid.
to be open, absolutely, absolutely. You know, the first portion always flies out of me, and then, you know, I'm open. The director is a wonderful director. And
who is the director?
His name is Valentino Ferreira.
And you've worked with him before.
He directed The Gift of Peace and The King of the Desert.
That's why there's just this collaboration where
Exactly.
everything, because you said I've worked with him, Valentino,
Yes.
and all of a sudden, now I see how it's all come together.
Yeah. And then I had done a solo show.
Yeah, tell me about that, because what was it, a slow
A
crawl?
Slow Crawl Home. That was about my experience.
Oh, a slow crawl home.
Yeah, it was about the homeless and my experience with the homeless in Philadelphia in the 80s. And I got to do that at the Actors Studio, directed by Valentino.
I
Mark
see.
and Martin produced that at the Tiffany.
Oh, was it the Tiffany?
Yeah, so that was really...
don't we miss that theater?
so much. I know, I wish we could do The King of the Desert there.
I love that theater.
It's such a beautiful theater.
And it's just sitting there.
It
First they
is.
were going to knock it down, and now it's just sitting.
And Barbara Bain did so much to get that, and now it's sitting there empty, and it was so beautiful, the shows that were going on there.
Yeah, we love that place.
I know.
And you wrote a children's book?
Yes, it's called Footles, and it's about a pair of feet.
Footles?
Yes, because you know how kids see from the knees down?
Yeah.
So it's teaching children about empathy.
But was this because of your child now?
Yes, well, it was partially because of her and partially because of my activist work. I was seeing so many children and realizing that if we teach children young about compassion and empathy, it would be such an easier process in adulthood, you know, to have to learn how to deal with conflict.
And this takes me back. I interrupted you on a slow crawl home because we were talking about who was producing it, and I got off on another tangent. But how could you do a one-person play about the homeless?
When I moved to the city when I was 18, I couldn't believe that this was going on in our country. And so I started bringing them hot chocolate and Cool Whip every night. And through that, I became friends with this entire network of people living on the streets. And I spent the next 4 years really, these were my best friends.
And did you write it?
I did.
And then did you perform it?
I did.
And how was it performed?
Well, I played all of the characters.
Oh, that's what I'm wondering.
And that's what's so amazing about Valentino and what he's doing with The King of the Desert as well, is it's not just one person talking at you. You actually see whole scenes. So when I did the show, when the photographer came in to take pictures, she had seen the show the night before. She said, "I need a picture of you and Thomas and Pooh and Griddle." And so I did the scene, and she said, "No, Stacey, I need to see all of them." I said, "It's a one-person show."
I see.
And she said, "I forgot, because when you're doing it, it looks."
She felt like it was a different
and
character.
that is really Val's gift.
The King of the Desert, are you performing in it?
No, I wrote it.
Yes.
And Renee Rivera, who's also an Actors Studio member, is starring in it.
And that's your husband?
Yes.
And is it about him in some way?
It is about he came from a small town in San Antonio, and he was in an environment that didn't really encourage self-expression. And it's about him surviving his childhood that had a lot of difficulties and violence and also a lot of love. And really growing up, going to New York, getting a full scholarship to Juilliard.
And getting in the Actors
Studio, going to Broadway. And it's really about dreams. And 10% of our proceeds are going to the National Latino Children's Institute.
Oh, that's fantastic.
We really want to just show that
and
you can
you
do
take
anything.
it? Can you take King of the Desert everywhere?
That's our goal. We want to take it to schools, and we want to take it to San Antonio and New York and Philadelphia, and that's really our plan.
Well, that's what we want to see. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This is such a pleasure, and I really enjoy your show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks for being with us. Keep writing to JAQUINN1@AOL.com email. And also your letters are very welcome at 777 South Figueroa, 44th floor, Los Angeles 90017. See you next time.